God's grace is His undeserved favor. It is a gift He freely gives to us. Join us in 1 Peter as we explore the transformative power of God's grace. Together, we'll learn how to apply grace in our lives and reflect it for others to see.
Well, good morning, New Union. We had all kinds of excitement during first service this morning. We started out in the dark, but it was a good time. Turning on our flashlights, looking at hymnals. It was a sweet time for us. But the lights have come back on. We weren't going to have a live stream today because the internet was out even before the power went out. We didn't think it was going to be possible. And my wife, she said, it really seems like Satan doesn't want all the men in the room to hear you talk about husbands today. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of a bummer, everything that's happened. She goes, maybe you should do the sermon twice because husbands don't hear it the first time anyway. Little barbs, right? I saw Dale Gravett in the hallway, and he knew we were dealing with husbands after dealing with wives last week. And he says, hey, I'm ready for your sermon this morning. And he pulls out a couple of earplugs. And his wife, Vicki, looks at him and goes, you try to put those in, you might find them somewhere else here shortly. So wives in the room are ready for you husbands to hear this. And I've heard about a few guys that are sick, right? They know who they are. Some heard the power was out and maybe be trying to avoid this place today. Oh, I heard the power's out. That stinks, right? And they chose to stay home. But God knows who they are. But I'm glad that you men are in the room this morning when some of your comrades have chosen to stay at home and take care of the needs of the house. But here we are going to look at one verse today in chapter 3, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. And it says this, likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, or literally as unto knowledge, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Well, the context of chapter 3, we go all the way back to chapter 2, verses 11 and 12, where it says, if you proclaim the excellencies of an excellent God, then you therefore must be excellent in all of your behavior. If the world is going to listen to you share the gospel, this story of an excellent God sending an excellent Savior for us, if they're going to hear that from your lips, we must be excellent in our lives. And he goes into several areas of our lives where we have to be excellent. We talked about the Sunday before the inauguration about the government and that we need to be excellent citizens in the world. And then we talked about the workplace, that you have to be excellent in the workplace, that if we are going to proclaim the excellencies of an excellent God, we must be excellent workers. And then we have now come to the home. Last week we dealt with wives, and this week we deal with the husbands, that if we are going to proclaim an excellent God, then we must be excellent wives, and we must be excellent husbands as well. And so look there in verse 7, and we're going to pick it apart. And I'm going to try and make this real practical so that you husbands can easily apply this morning. Look there in verse 7. And this is the first thing. You have a command here. Right? If you want to write this down, this is the command. And it says there that you are to be gentle. It says, husbands, live with your wives, and the Greek text says, as unto knowledge, showing honor to the woman as a weaker vessel. Now, unto knowledge, what that means is that you are smart. It means that you don't think that this woman that God has given to you, it's not just another human being. This is not just another man, and you cannot treat her like she is another male. When men get together, we wrestle, we punch each other, we do that sort of thing. We talk harshly to each other, talk smack to each other. This woman that God has given to you, you cannot treat her the same way. The differences between men and women are not merely physical. We can look and we see the differences physically. That's easy to do. But this person, she is a different person altogether. She's a different kind of human. Male and female, he created them. And so they are equal, but they are very, very different from us. And it says there, she is called, in this verse, she is called a weaker vessel. Now, some of that right there may cause some of you women to bristle a little bit. Hey, Pastor, what do you mean that I'm weaker, right? Let's clarify. Let's make sure we understand what Peter is saying here. This doesn't mean that the woman is an inferior vessel. That's not what this means at all. It's not talking about a vessel. If we're talking about vessels, we're not talking about Tupperware here. We're talking about crystal. We're talking about fine china. We're talking about porcelain here. If most of you men are probably like me, you know that your wife has china somewhere. You just don't know where it's kept. You have no idea. You don't ever have need of it. She keeps it in a very safe place. But now you know where the Tupperware is, right? It's thrown into some cabinet somewhere, and it's all disheveled, and every now and then you got to go in there and straighten it up. And it's hard to find lids that go with the containers most of the time. You don't take great care with the Tupperware like you do with the fine china. And he says here that this is how a man should treat his wife. He should recognize that he is to be tender. He is to be delicate with her. He is to, as it says, handle her with care. She is different emotionally. She is different physically from you. She does not bear up under the treatment that you and I kind of have to adjust to in life. We get put out by them sometimes, sadly. We get irritated with them because we don't really understand that they're different. And this is the sad thing, that a man will ignore his wife in the name of masculinity and strength. He won't see her as different. What he'll do is he'll see her as a nuisance. And that's sad. He will see feminine gentleness as weakness in that woman. And that's the wrong way to go about it. So if we were to ask women, okay, and I'm going to take a stab at it instead of taking a poll in the room, but if we were to ask them, what does it mean for your husband to live with you as unto knowledge, as a precious vessel? How does she interpret that? This is what she would tell you, gentlemen. I want to make this simple. I want to make it practical. I want to make it very easy for you to follow. So you write these things down as I say them this morning. Number one, to be gentle to her, to treat her as something precious. It means that you have tenderness toward your wife. Now, what do I mean when I say tenderness? Men, when you get a burn or a cut on a finger, on a part of your body, you don't treat that part of your body the same for a while. Because you know if it gets touched, if you bang it up against something, there's going to be pain, it's going to be hurt. And so you're gentle. If it's a finger, you're very gentle. You're very careful with that. You're more mindful because it is sensitive. And so you approach that part of your body with a great deal of wisdom. And that is what it means to be tender with your wife. That you treat her unlike anything else in your field of experience. She is very unique. And the way that you talk to her, the way that you address her needs to be different. Your voice tone needs to be a certain way. The way that you respond to her, everything changes when you come into her frame of reference. You can't just be you. And you can't use that as an excuse here. You have to be more like her. You have to be tender with her. Y'all with me so far? Be tender. Treat her with tenderness. Number two, Your wife needs to be listened to. And this is a lost art, not just with our wives, but in our world. Nothing communicates honor to somebody more than listening to them, because nothing is more important to a person than what they think. Whenever your wife is speaking and you don't pay her any attention, that, in a sense, is the highest of disrespect that you can give to her. It's saying to her that her voice that is declaring to you what she thinks, it's not really worth listening to. I have better things to listen to than your heart. And when you don't listen, you're not just disregarding her voice. You're disregarding her deeply. You're disregarding her life, her soul, and that is painful to this other person that God has given to you. So when your wife talks, you can't be listening to her with one ear and then listening to Sports Center with the other. Are you with me, fellas? You can't do that to her. You have to be able to listen. And it's not just with your wife. There are a lot of times people will come to me after a meeting and go, "You were real quiet in there." And the reason is because there's a lot of other people that like to hear themselves talk. And it's not worth fighting over the airtime. You know what I'm saying? It's a lost art in our world. We have to learn how to be better listeners. And guys, we have to especially do it with our wives. Number 3, your wife needs affection. Now the guys in the room are like, hot dog, we're getting down to the rat killing now, right? Notice I didn't say that she needs sex. She needs affection. And there's a difference. Your wife needs affection, and what I mean by that is non-sexual touching. Many times we don't communicate tenderness to our wives through touching unless we are sexually excited. And that's a problem, because then all it becomes is just a down payment. And then she feels used, she feels manipulated, and understandably so. So affection means non-sexual touching. It means that you just hold her hand, that you just put your arm around her, that you have to be able to touch her and be tender with her. It's everything that it means when it says to live with your wives in an understanding way. Number 4, your wife needs development. Your wife can never ever wonder, what could it have been if I had never married this man? You, husbands, you have to figure out what your wife loves to do. And then when you figure that out, you have to invest time-wise. You have to invest money in that. You want to invest in the things that she is passionate about. Everybody in here that knows my wife, they know that she loves to play the piano. Her dream has always been to have a baby grand piano. And so early on in our marriage, I decided, hey, I'm going to try and get her a baby grand piano. And it's not something that you just go out and buy right away. You've got to plan for this thing. And so what I was doing is I got paid every 2 weeks at my first church. And every 2 weeks, I would pull a $100 bill out of my paychecks, and I'd stick it in an envelope. And she was getting so mad. She was like, "Where's all our money going? I know we're not spending that much." And she was getting angry, but I just kept putting that money, stowing that money away. And eventually I got enough that we had most of the piano. And I got an old piano book of hers. And it was her very first piano book that she had when she was like 4 years old. And I took $100 bills and I stuck them in each page throughout the book. And then I wrapped it and gave it to her for Christmas. And she opened it up and she was like, "Oh, great, a sentimental gift," you know? And then she started flipping through the book, and she saw the $100 bills, and she started to realize what was happening, that her dream was coming true. And she cried. She wept. Why? Because she knew that we were making a sacrifice financially so that she could have this thing she was going to be able to hone her gifts on, that she was going to be able to praise the Lord on. And that should not be something that just I have done. Men, we have to make an investment. We have to develop our wives. We have to find out what they're passionate about and make an investment there. Number 5, your wife interprets tenderness or understanding as time, that she needs your time. It means that you stop everything that you're doing and you do as a discipline what used to be a technique in order to try and capture her heart. See, when you're dating, this is something that kind of comes naturally, but when you get married, you have to do it as a discipline. She needs your time. My family went on vacation back in late October, early November. It was actually Halloween night. We decided to leave the kids behind and go to dinner at Texas Roadhouse. And so, shout out to Justin Smith. He loves the place, okay? But we walked there about a mile and a half to this restaurant. And we talked the whole way. We sat down, we talked together. But there was a couple across the aisle. And they were both looking different directions. And every now and then, she was all dressed up, and she would look at him, and she would say something, trying to start conversation. And he would mumble something and not even look at her. And as I watched them and tried to talk to my wife at the same time, I got irritated. I was like, hey, do you see them over there? She's like, stop it, you're embarrassing me, you know? And I was like, I need to talk to that guy. His wife is trying so hard. And I think some of us, we treat our wives this way, that they love us, they married us for us, and they want time with us, but we don't give them our attention. We don't give them our time. Number 6, your wife needs help. One of the great quotations I've ever heard was from Laura Schlesinger. Some of you may know her. She's a radio personality. She said this. She said, the sound of my husband vacuuming is foreplay. I love that, right? It's a great statement. Why? Because women need help. Guys, help pick up around the house. Whatever you can do it to help her. And I'll give you a little pastoral admonition on this. Whenever something has happened that day and you know that the possibility is good that maybe something's going to happen that night, if you know what I mean, listen, after dinner, don't go get in the shower and then hop into bed and wait there. Because what is she doing while you're going to do that? She's brushing kids' teeth. She's getting them ready for bed. She's cleaning up dinner. And then when she finally comes in and looks upon you, how is she going to feel? Don't do that. You have to lend a hand with these things. You tell her, why don't you go for a while? Go read a book. Go do something for yourself. And you let me clean this up and get the kids ready for bed. She will see you far more appealing after that than the former, okay? So she needs your help. And the 7th thing that I'm going to share with you, when your wife thinks of you being tender, she thinks of romance. And when I say romance, it's not talking about the effort part of your marriage where you go out and you work to make a living, to make money. I'm not talking about that. It's not talking about the sacrificial part where you're her protector, where you go and sign up for war, and if it eventually costs your life, then so be it. That's not what it's talking about here. This is talking about the heartfelt part of your marriage where you're writing notes to her, where you look into her eyes in such a way that she knows that you mean it when you say that you love her. It's holding her. It's remembering her birthday. It's remembering Valentine's Day. And for no good reason, going and getting her a gift. Guys, did you know you could do that? That for no reason, you could go out and get her something. See, when I remember her birthday, she thinks I'm efficient. But when I stop by Rayburn Acres flower stand on the way home, and it's right on the way home, when I stop there and get her a beautiful bouquet, now I've really done something. And I walk in the house, and her voice cracked, and I hold flowers, and she thinks it's the best thing ever because it's spontaneous, it's creative. And sometimes it's just getting her a 99-cent plant from Lowe's and coming home and say, plant, right? And she thinks you're the greatest. Do it for no reason sometimes. And you'll find that it'll really help you out, okay? Now, ladies, I need to challenge you here, okay? I'm giving the men a lot, but like last week, there's something here for you. See, all of these things that I'm talking about are a whole lot easier for a man to do if his wife is respectful. Y'all with me? And I want you to know, women, that there are some men sitting here that in hearing this, they're thinking, you don't know my wife. You don't know her. They're thinking, you're asking me to do the most destructive, contradictory thing in all of reason. So I hope, ladies, that this isn't a difficult thing for your husband to do. There are ways for you to make it easy for him to love you well. And you need to honor him and respect him. And fellas, you remember this. There's an old Aesop's fable where the wind and the sun are talking about which one is more powerful. And so they challenge each other to see who's going to knock the hat off the traveler. You remember this? And the wind blows up to about 90 miles an hour like it was this morning and tries to blow the traveler's hat off, but he just matches the hat down on his head. But the sun beats down on the traveler and he willingly takes his hat off. Why do I tell you that? Because if you men have wives that you see as out of control, if you have a woman like that, you're not going to force them to act the way that they ought, to do what the Bible tells you. You're not going to force them to do that. So why don't you just be what you should be? And then you let God take care of her heart and deal with them. Man, I'm out of time. Look at verse 7, and let me show you this very quickly. I showed you one thing, all right, but here's another thing. That you are to show her honor, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life. We just got done talking about how different they are. But now he says, yes, they are different from you, but they are also your equal. We think sometimes because the Bible tells wives to submit to their husbands and tells the husbands to lead, that maybe it has the women being less dignified. Listen, Christ in the Trinity, he is the one that submits to the Father, but there is no dignity lost in that. Trust me. And so it is with our wives. They are not any lesser than us in dignity just because they submit to us and we are called to lead. And this is really something that's counterculture out there in the world. You look everywhere else. I was trading emails actually with Jenny Phillips this week talking about this very thing. And she said that she doesn't even have her own visa, that she's listed under Scott's visa. She's like on the back of Scott's visa, her husband's visa. And the reason is because they're not seen as highly as the man. And she's listed, I'm going to take a stab at pronouncing this. She's listed on the back of Scott's visa as a pengakut. It's a follower, or literally a tag-along in their language. She's just a follower of Scott. And that's the way it is around the rest of the world. We don't understand how awesome this passage is because we live in America in a very Judeo-Christian culture. They have that Judeo-Christian mindset. But around the world, it's very different. But how comforting is it to see how God sees women in relation to the man? Okay? So is she different? Yes. Is she submissive? Yes. But within the Trinity, right? Remember, Christ does not lose any dignity by submitting to the Father. Look at the last part of this verse. I'm going to touch it real quick. It says there, that your prayers may not be hindered. In other words, God says, if you are out of fellowship with your wife and you're not faithful to your wife, then you are out of fellowship with me. Psalm 66, verse 18. If I regard iniquity in my heart, God will not hear my prayer. that the prayer of the wicked is an abomination. And God is saying, if you're not faithful to your wife, then I can't use you in anything spiritual. I'm not going to bless you. I'm not going to put my face upon you, because this area of your life is an abomination. For me to take care of you and then give you this responsibility to take care of this other person, for you to drop the ball on that, you have no fellowship with me. See, fellas, you know this as well as I do. If a Christian man reads his Bible, if he is successful in business, in athletics, in education, if he has a lot of money, he can have all those other things. But if he is an angry, unfaithful, and abusive man to his wife, he has no respect before men. Is it true? You know it's true. You know it's true. And when I hear a guy talking Bible, talking about how he's a believer, but I see him deserting his kids, I look at that guy with an asterisk. When I hear a country singer out there in Hollywood singing a song about love, but I know that his marriage is a wreck because it's very public, that guy isn't singing a song about love. He's making noise to me. And I listen to that guy with an asterisk. And it's that way. And here God is saying, if you are out of fellowship with your wife, then you are out of fellowship with me. But here's the deal. You have a guy that, I don't care what he does in life, if he's barely scraping by and he's barely riding around on the back of a garbage truck picking up people's garbage, that guy, if he loves his wife, if he is tender with his wife, if he respects his wife, that guy can admonish me any way that he wishes. That guy has a voice in my life because of the way that he honors his wife. So don't kid yourself. If this is a problem, you need to go home and you need to fix it. You have to have tenderness toward her and you have to honor her. My buddy, Jonathan Sparks in West Tennessee, he is a wildlife conservation officer, which means that he makes a living trapping nuisance animals. And he traps beavers, otters that mess up people's waterways and such. And he does large tract land management. He's very good at what he does. But what he really makes his money on is residential stuff. Because this time of the year, and I'm sure you've smelled it, right? Right now is the mating season for skunks. Anybody noticed? And you go, boy, you smell it, but how is that a romantic aroma, right? I don't know, but it is with them. And so you have these skunks, right? They're seeking each other out. And what they do this time of year is they'll chew their way in through foundation vents, or they'll get in under the heating and air unit and get into your foundation. And then they get in there and they get romantic and they start letting loose the yellow mist. You know what I'm saying? And the whole house ends up stinking to high heaven. And I started to think about that as I was looking at his posts, how he's taking care of all these skunks right now. And I thought about it. Isn't that kind of like the home? See, we men, we build these big, beautiful houses, right? But you get a skunk in the foundation and he starts to let loose, you've got a big problem. Because you can drive up to that house, you can walk into that house. But if there's a skunk in the foundation, you're like Kramer. You walk through the door and it hits you, right? But see, you can have everything going for you as a man. You can be a great businessman. You can be successful as a coach. You can do all the things in life right. But if you've got that skunk in your foundation, if your relationship with your wife is lacking, you have got to fix that, and you got to fix it today. And you go, well, who do I look to? Who is it that I'm supposed to be like? You compare yourself to any other man, and that's a losing venture. It's a waste of your time. But the ultimate bridegroom is Christ. And he laid down his life for the bride of Christ, the church, for you and me. And he died on the cross so that we could be free from sin. And the Bible refers to him as the bridegroom. And he is the ultimate example to us husbands about how we are to treat our wives. And I don't know where you're at this morning. I know that everybody in this room is not a believer in Christ. I know this. I'm not so naive to think that that is possible. Maybe you see how a husband should treat a wife. You see that Christ is the ultimate bridegroom. You see that he died for all the people in the room that are saved, yes, but he also died for you. And if he is drawing you to himself this morning, then come talk to me and let me introduce you to him today. But if you're saved and you've got a skunk in the foundation of your house in the crawl space, it's time to fix that. Grab the hand of your husband. Grab the hand of your wife. If you have things that are going on in your marriage, today is the day to fix it so that you can move forward well, loving that other person that God has given to you. Are you with me? Let me pray for us, and then we'll sing real quick. God, I'm just so grateful for the way that you have addressed husbands and wives in your word these last couple of weeks in this awesome passage. I thank you for the ultimate example of Christ and how he loves the bride, the church, laying his life down for her. And it gives us the ultimate example to follow. And so, God, I pray this morning that if we as husbands have not done a good job of treating our wives with tenderness, with gentleness, God, show us where we have gone wrong in our hearts. Change our hearts this morning that we might correct what is broken. God, help us to honor them as fellow heirs of the kingdom. Yes, we are different, but we are the same. God, help us to treat them properly. Help us to be willing to lay our lives down for them as Christ did the church. And so, God, as we sing, however you want us to respond, I pray that you would move in our hearts this morning. Give us the courage to do so today. It's in the name of Christ I ask these things. Amen.